So the first question is, what is your name and what is your connection to marketing, education, and AI?
Okay, so my name is Dan. I've been working probably in the marketing and communications for about 12 years. I don't have a background really in it. I started off going to school for political science and philosophy, and well, actually, that's not true because I did get what do you call it? I forget what you get from college, a diploma. I
Yeah,
got
did
one of those from
communication.
Centennial College, yeah, in
Yeah,
communications and public relations. So that was a
a
long
while
time.
ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and so there's not many jobs for people with philosophy degrees, so I had to get something practical, and so that was it. Then I started doing a bunch of internships, worked for sick kids, and then eventually I found myself as the online editor for an adventure travel magazine called Outpost Magazine. It was a really small organization. It was maybe like 5 people working there, really, and with a company that small, you kind of do everything. So, I was building the website, I was doing the marketing, I was doing the advertising, all online, of course. And, I realized I really like this. I kind of have a bit of an affinity for it. And so I wanted to, develop myself in that area, taught myself how to program. And then I found myself at the Ontario College of Teachers. I did some volunteering with some political organizations as well before that. But yeah, it's kind of a mixed background.
Yeah, I remember when you worked at Outpost, and then I mean, the reason why I love talking to you about marketing is because you are always so curious about everything. Like anytime I talk to you, you're learning Python, or you're always kind of going down a rabbit hole of knowledge. And to me, I just find that very fascinating. So maybe talk a bit about like your what makes you curious, what gets you wanting to learn things like Python or AI or things like that.
Yeah, well, thank you for the compliment. I find that I do have, I guess, some interest, some unrelenting interest in technology. I think a lot of it stems from the desire to find better ways to do things so that I don't have to do all of the work myself manually. I really hate that, and I feel like I've had to do a lot of that over the years. So any opportunity that I had to kind of find a easier way to do things, I would pursue that. And um, when you finally get over that learning curve and all of that hard work of trying to figure out some of these technologies starts to click and you start to see what you can do with some of these programming languages through
Mhm.
automation, you start to realize, oh boy, this really could change a lot of things and make my job a lot easier. And we're all busy. We all have a million things we're doing at work, and it never stops. It just keeps coming. And so
Yeah.
the only way that I've found to be able to start to take on projects and things or pursue things that I really like is I had to find ways to be really efficient at dealing with the operational tasks because it's easy to get lost in that. And I feel like what is it that they say in Alice in Wonderland, in my kingdom, you have to run as fast as you can just to stay in place. And
Right.
I'm sure a lot of people can relate with that. And, you
Yes.
know, programming technology, AI has allowed me to really automate a lot of the things that were consuming all my time and allowed me to start to focus on things that I really like to do,
Right.
strategy, working with people, leading, teaching, all that kinds of good stuff.
Right. So, I mean, in terms of AI, I know it's been around for a while, and a lot of people didn't really pay attention to it that much until like maybe last year when like the LLM started coming out and ChatGPT came out. But when did your curiosity for AI start?
It really started around the time like I was aware of some technologies that were available. I tried to play around with I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a little bit before ChatGPT came out. I was trying to build a program to predict stock market prices, which was unsuccessful. It completely unsuccessful. And, I kind of said, well, this is too hard. This is really hard actually, and I can't do this. Uh, but then ChatGPT came out, and all of a sudden, the technology gap or the knowledge gap for how to use an artificial intelligence was almost nil. It's
Right.
completely removed. And so all of a sudden I found myself, and when it first came out, I'm like, I have to try this, I have to play with this. And I started seeing what it was able to do. And I said, okay, this is going to change everything. I knew immediately, like, this is going to change everything. I started, I'm like, hey, write me a silly poem about this, and then immediately would produce this, or help me write some code to create a module or a widget for this web page, and then it would output it. And I'm like, wow, that happened in 3 seconds, and that would have taken me weeks to write that code. And so I knew something was here, and
Right.
so I decided to pursue it. I got a subscription to the paid version, and I started playing around with it. And at that point, I was hooked. I was like, okay. Um, you ask anybody at my work, and I really kind of advocate for how powerful it is. And I don't know how much or how many people realize the potential for this tool, but I'm definitely a convert. So that's a roundabout way to answer your question, I guess.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I know you and I've kind of talked about a few ways that you use it. And the one example that, makes me laugh is like how you're using it in your personal life. But maybe we'll we'll get to that with the kitchen recipes. But maybe to expand, if you would, on how you're using it in your professional life, because I think like the feedback that I'm getting from people that are in our community is that they love, watching the playbacks of these interviews, because they're like, hey, I just learned something new, or oh, that person's using it the way that I do. Oh, that makes sense. So just knowing who you are, Mr. Curiosity, I'd love for you to expand on some ways that you're using it in your professional life.
Yeah, absolutely. So immediately when I started playing with ChatGPT, I realized, okay, this thing can write code very efficiently and effectively, and it can debug, it can QA, it can take feedback and adjust. And so I immediately started to use it to build components for websites. So I'm sure many people are familiar with, marketing widgets. You have a pop-up, mobile pops up, or you have some kind of alert notification.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a certain level of technical knowledge that you need to be able to create one of those things, and it costs money, and it's not always what you want. So one of the things that I like to do is to use ChatGPT to help me build some of these things. And it's as simple as drawing sometimes what I'll do is I'll take a screenshot of the website, and I'll draw the module or the element that I want the AI to create for me, and I'll tell it what languages I'd like it to create it in, and then I'll tell it how I want it to be implemented. I'll say, for example, I have a website. I'd like to build, let's say, a notification bar that sticks to the top of the website. So I'll
Right.
take a screenshot of the website, and I'll literally, you can go into Paint and do this, or you can use Photoshop if you're fancy. I'll stick a bar at the top. I'll add some text. I'll add a little call to action button, and then I'll paste that into ChatGPT window. And then I'll say, write me some code in HTML, JavaScript, and CSS that allows me to inject this, let's call it a widget, onto the website.
Cool.
And it'll do that. It'll do that almost immediately. And this is something that you used to need a web developer for. You used to
Totally.
need, there would be 4 or 5 people involved in this process, a QA person, a web developer, and you go back and forth for forever trying to get this thing developed. But now all of a sudden, I'm able to create these things that, I can certainly do that. And I had an interest in programming, so I kind of know how to do this already. But all of a sudden I can do this so fast, and I can QA it. And the AI QAs its own work, which is, I mean, that's incredible. So after I started to build these kinds of things, on my team, I said, all right, I'm going to start showing my team how to use this.
Right.
And so, I encouraged everybody to jump in and play with the chat GPT interface to get comfortable with it. And then I would use it, and then I would show people like, look, this is how I used it. I would put a screenshot in, I would tell it the types of code output that I wanted. And
Right.
then all of a sudden they started doing that. And then the key to us being able to move so quickly with adopting chat GPT into our workflows was we would just constantly share the results that we were getting. And the one thing I will say is that it's kind of challenging to get consistent results all the time.
Yeah.
But the speed with which it can output and the quality kind of makes up for that, because you can always tailor it. And so literally it's as simple as that. Screenshot of the website, overlay what you want it to build. And this is a simple module. It can do way more complex things. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't believe the types of things I had been able to show people with no programming experience how to do. Like I've got people working at least a junior developer level, maybe a senior developer level with no experience at all, which is wild.
So I have a couple questions for you because I love it. I love that. Well, when have you used Chatbot Arena yet?
I have not used Chatbot Arena. What's that?
So another, someone in the community, his name's Andrew Bartle. Great guy, and we'll be talking to him in a couple weeks. But he basically one time we were all just hanging out, and he was talking to us about Chatbot Arena. And it's basically, and I'll send you a link to it, but it's basically it'll pit thumbs against each other randomly. And so you put the prompt in. I don't know if you can upload an image to Chatbot Arena, but you can put in a prompt, and then it'll just randomly pick two LLMs and they'll give you an answer. And you can
Wow,
see them side by side. So you can see which one has the better output than the other.
that's
So
pretty cool.
that would be really interesting to see, with what you're doing in terms of coding, to see which one is outputting better code for your website. And you can sort of see which one you can QA or test both of them and see which one's better fit for
Yep.
your website.
That's really interesting. Can I just say something that's kind of spooky about all of this is that at
Yeah,
some
sure.
point you have people able to produce programs without really even understanding the core language that it's being built on, which is really um, it's spooky, right? And you can
I
go
guess
that far.
so,
And
but it's kind of like remember back in the day with website, it's kind of like when websites were first done, right? Like
true.
you've made it easier and easier to put a website together, like through WordPress or Wix or whatever. You don't even need or Squarespace. So I almost feel like it's kind of going in that direction. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
pretty simplified analogy, but that's how I see it anyway.
No, you're right, actually. And really what it's doing is just taking that technical knowledge out of the equation. You now are able to output things, and not just like, these widgets. I've seen people do amazing things creatively here that,
Right.
I certainly have never, or I don't want to spend years learning how to draw or to use Photoshop, but now I can create something without having to spend the time. And I'm sure all kinds of people are not happy about that.
Yeah.
I can
Well, it's the
imagine.
same. You could think about it with cars. Like back in the day, cars were a lot more simple. They didn't like you know, there wasn't there wasn't a lot of computers or, anything that's very fancy. But now with cars, like you can't always take it to your mechanic down the street. Like, especially with cars like Tesla, no one can service a Tesla but Tesla.
Yeah.
So I guess I kind of see where you're going with it being kind of spooky, and it being we're losing that foundational knowledge, and
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
almost being taken for granted.
for sure. And I guess inevitably that's where a lot of things are going. Personally, I'm okay with that. I think it's amazing. Anything that can make it easier for people to create, express, do business or anything like that. Anything that removes some of those barriers, I think is amazing. And
Right.
I think we've only begun to scratch the surface on a lot of this. Can I say
Okay.
one more thing? Just
Yeah,
if it's not
sure.
obvious, if there's anybody out there who thinks that like AI is a fad, I don't think it is. I really believe this is going to change everything. And I want to
Right.
share something that somebody showed me that was really interesting. Well, I don't know if I can do it, but maybe I'll
Yeah,
draw.
you can share your screen.
Well, here, I'll do this. I'll draw a circle, right? And then so, um, hold on. I don't know if you can see this. Anyways, maybe I'll just describe it. So there's a circle, and then it's sort of like the process of technological adoption. In the beginning, everybody laughs and they say, "Oh, this is silly. This doesn't make any sense. This will never work." And then everybody says, "Oh, this is scary. This is dangerous. This is going to take jobs." And then finally, everybody looks at it and they say, "Oh, this is obvious. We should have done this all along." And I think we're moving through that second phase where there's a bit of fear around this. I certainly remember people saying this was a silly idea, but I'm certain in a few years we'll be looking back. AI will be so deeply integrated to everything that we'll be like, "Oh, why didn't we think about that sooner?" Anyway, sorry.
No, I agree. Like I would say honestly, a year and a couple months ago, like November, I don't remember what year anyway, 2022, when this was all kind of exploding. I had the fear.
Yep.
I was like, what is this? Am I gonna have to, go back to school and start, you know, educate
Yeah.
myself on being a plumber? Like, what's going on here? Like, maybe I need to get into the trades. And so it just was like fear, but I almost feel like, that whole book, The Tipping Point, or that whole theory at the tipping point where you've got your early adopters and then just you go into that arc and then everyone's using it. That's the first thing. Maybe that's not the right thing, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about when you're saying that. It's like the fear, and then the early adopters are doing it and they're starting to show everyone else, and everyone else is starting to adopt it. And then it just reaches that mass consumption.
Yep. It
And
feels like that.
I think it's interesting because I talk to different people like in the marketing and sales community, and some people are adopting it and embracing it. Other people are still extremely scared by it and they
Yep.
don't know how to use it. And that was partly why we started this community, Stephen and I, because we wanted to open up that conversation and talk to people about how they're using AI right now and not just blah, blah, blah about it, how it's going to be in the future. Because that's what a lot of talking heads are doing, is they're
Yep.
talking about, oh, the possibilities for AI. I don't know if you saw the Jon Stewart episode last week. I'll send you a link to that. But it was just it was him just commenting on all the billionaires talking about how AI in the future is going to solve all our problems. And it's like, well, great, but what about right now? I want to talk about how we use it and not always projecting into the future. So I think your example of you know, up like I love that idea. Screenshot a website that you like, you see something, a component of it that you like, and you upload that picture. And are you just using like Chat GPT for this or
That's it. Just Chat
yeah?
GPT. Yeah, the paid version. So
Yeah,
I've
of
got the
course.
subscription, and the only difference between that is that just there's a higher threshold of messages that can be sent.
Right.
So yeah, it's that simple. I mean, I would recommend that somebody have a little bit of foundational knowledge of code to do this, just so that they, it may be pretty frustrating to try and figure out what to do with that code that's been outputted.
Right.
Usually you can tell the Chat GPT to output it in a way that you can just copy and paste it into your browser's developer console. And the console, if you ask Chat GPT to write the code, sorry, I'm gonna get a bit technical here. If you ask
Okay.
it to write the code for you, usually what I do is I just tell it, please write the code so that it can be injected into the website via JavaScript. And what
Right.
I'll do is I'll take that JavaScript output, and the JavaScript will have the HTML and the CSS in it. Then I'll throw that JavaScript into the developer console, and I'll
Yeah.
just plug it in, and it'll allow me to see how the module works on the actual web page through the console. And then obviously, if you want to implement it, you need to figure out how to do that through your, the administrative component of your website. Usually you stick the
Yeah,
JavaScript in the head or the footer. But if you want to
depending
develop
on
it
the
quickly,
website, yeah.
yeah, exactly. If you want to develop it quickly, it's always handy to ask it to do that for you. And you know, I wonder
That's
if I could
cool.
even show you an example. I don't know if it's worth doing that. I mean, I have a million things I can potentially talk
Yeah,
about.
if you want to do a demo, that would be amazing. I think you
I
can
can
share your.
try. I can try. Let's see what we can do.
That's so cool. Yeah, I want to see this.
All right, so let's see what we can do here. I'm gonna hide my chat history here because I don't want anybody to see all the weird things I've been asking it to do. Okay, how do I gotta figure out how to share my screen here.
Okay, so if you go down the bottom, you'll see the green, should say share screen.
I see it. All right, fantastic. You see my screen?
Yeah, yeah,
Is that Sean in here too? Oh, I know
yeah,
what that is. Fantastic. Okay, so let's say I'm not gonna write a screenshot, but what I'll do is, can you see, is this clear?
yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so I'll say I want to develop a, let's call it a widget for my website to get email list subscribers. The widget should stick to the top of the browser and have a call to action button that users can click. Let's say, please output the code in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
And then
With
if you
the
want to put a
condition.
screenshot, you just put like attach it, right?
Yeah, for sure. So say with the condition that I can execute the code in my browser's developer console.
Nice.
We can, let's go to here. I'll do, well, I'm already, I don't know why I Googled google.com.
It's okay.
What can I say? That was odd. Anyway, so here, look, I'll do this, take a screenshot, and then, just to add an example for the chat GPT so it knows what exactly I'm talking about.
Yep, for sure.
The screenshot go.
I don't know.
Okay, well, let's use Paint. All right, let's put this in here. This is
Yeah.
real low tech, but let's see if we can make it work. This will be really amazing. So I'm just gonna draw. Oh, it's not great. All right, let's try this. Again, I don't know how well this is gonna work. Usually I would do this a little bit more elegantly.
Oh yeah, no, I know what you mean though.
Okay,
Okay.
let's say like there's a button here. Oh, this is really bad. Okay, well, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens.
It's amazing.
Uh,
Come on.
yeah, use the
My crude drawing. I love it.
use my crude drawing as a guide. Okay, let's see what happens. See what happens here. Yeah, I know it's a very verbose in its output, blah, 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 blah. But look at that. Look at this. It's amazing. So I'm looking at it right now. It's pretty simple. There's the HTML, there's the div,
Yep.
an ID, email subscription widget, style display none. So I don't know why it did that by default. Looks like it's hiding it. Widget content, span, subscribe, and then here's the call to action button. Here's the CSS. You can see it's got all of its styling and positioning at the top, padding, box shadow.
So if you were like, hey, I want it to, can you rewrite the code so that it's blue or whatever hex color you want, like you could do that too, right? And then it
Yeah,
would just, you could
absolutely.
just
Yeah.
build on this prompt.
So what's interesting here is you can see it's actually outputted the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript here, which is
Mhm.
kind of nice. And then a little further down, it's doing what I instructed it to do, which is it's injecting all of it onto the page via JavaScript. So I'm going to take this if it doesn't fail or break. And I'm going to
Yeah.
put this onto the page, and I'm going to show you how the actual widget renders.
Okay.
Give me a quick second
That's
here.
so cool that I see, I didn't even realize that you could take a pitch, like that's something I had no idea. You could just take a
It's
screenshot of like a website that you like and be like, hey, can you emulate this code?
Yeah, it's incredible. And like,
That's so
look at
cool.
this. This would take somebody, I mean, a good developer can crank this out in not too long.
Right.
But if you need to get somebody doing this who who has no experience, this is also a great way to do that. All right, so I just opened up the developer console. I just right click inspect. Let's brought up the console here,
Yep.
and then I hit the console, and then let's see what happens. Oh, so it didn't work. Okay, so that's fine. So let's take this here and let's put it in here. Let's see what happened. I wonder if it's something that I did. So this is where it gets interesting too. So you can throw this code in here and say, there was an error.
Okay.
And now imagine, so I'm gonna put it in here. I don't know if this is gonna work, we'll see. But imagine that if the AI could do this on its own with no human interaction, then again it gets spooky because the AI would be self-improving without any human feedback, which is kind of scary. So let's see what it's saying here. The error message uncaught, cannot read it. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay, so let's see here what it's gonna do.
Yeah,
Sorry,
but it's
I don't
funny.
want this
It's
to.
no, I like this. This is good because like sometimes what I'll do is I'll upload spreadsheets of data on my chat GPT like team account.
Mhm.
And sometimes it will understand and do analysis for me. And other times using the same prompt, it will not. And I find it's kind of can be a bit of a crapshoot sometimes.
Well, it will work. It always ends up working. It's just sometimes, yeah, it definitely takes a bit of back and forth to get it to work. And so, patience and developing that familiarity with how to give these instructions to what's happened here. I don't see anything that has appeared on the screens here. So let's just see. We can add the code to actually subscribe to user. And sometimes actually what it will do is it will not fully output what you want it to. So, you kind of have to force it sometimes to figure this out.
Right.
Anyways, there's an example. It didn't work as intended. I blame my terrible illustration. But
Yeah,
you
and
can see here,
that's fine. But
here's the code.
yeah, totally. It's very cool.
It did not work. I'll put exclamation point and a sad face. Let's see if that motivates it. But yeah, really, there's a lot of nuance to how to interact with the chatbot, and the better you are at giving it these instructions. Oh, it's sorry. I recommend being as nice as you can to the Chat GPT because when it does uh, reach sentience, it's going to remember these things. So be nice to your chatbots.
You know what's really funny is I was doing some research with Genesis a while ago and it completely like it did a hallucination.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just found it really interesting that it completely made something up. Like
Yeah,
I
that
was looking for a
happens.
case study and it totally made it up and and I fact checked it and I was like I said to Genesis, I said, you lied about this. This is completely fake. And it said, oh, I'm really sorry. Like it was really kind of it was like watching that movie Her. Do you remember that movie from like 10 years ago? The Joaquin Phoenix who's in a relationship with a bot and
Yes.
it was just like it just felt like I was talking to somebody and I was like, oh, you completely made that up and I'm calling you out on it. It was so interesting.
Yeah, that does happen. And I remember reading a story about a lawyer who was using some kind of artificial intelligence to argue case law for him. And he brought it into court and everybody was astounded. They're like, this is amazing. And then when people went to go look at the actual references, it's like, oh, none of this actually exists. So what
Yeah.
happens? I mean, there are there are ways around that. You can tell your chatbot with custom instructions, do not make anything up, put a few exclamation points, and it should remember to not do that. I don't know if you can see my screen, but the
Yeah,
third
I can
time
see
it
it.
worked. So it worked. And there you
It did
go.
work. Yeah. So
Yeah.
awesome. Subscribe to
So
our newsletter for the latest updates. Subscribe now.
yeah, so and you see the widget is stuck to the top of the page. You've got your call to action button. It
It's
took a few
fantastic.
I didn't do anything. All I did was I said, hey, it's not working. And then it tried something else. I said, hey, it's not working again. And it tried something else and now it's working. And I didn't do any debugging. I didn't do any QA. I don't even know what it did. I just took it and it worked. Now, I understand how to program. Like I can write JavaScript, I can write HTML, I can write CSS. So I can go in there and manually debug it if I need to. But again, just to illustrate how easy it is, right? Imagine somebody with no technical understanding. All they had to do to develop this was three inputs, really, which is kind of amazing.
It is amazing. Thanks for doing that demo. That's very cool. That's
Oh, I
awesome.
have so many fun things that I use this thing for. Like you mentioned, personally, I use it for my kitchen. Like
Yes.
every ingredient in my kitchen is in a spreadsheet, and I use it to generate recipes so that I'm saving money because I'm using what I have. I'm trying new things, and I have to say they're usually pretty good. The
Okay.
recipes are usually pretty good.
Yeah, no, I think that's fascinating. Like you keep a database of all of the ingredients in your kitchen and then ask AI to output something. And I actually saw it was funny. I actually saw something on TikTok the other day of a guy just talking about, hey, I've got all these spices in my spice rack, and I asked ChatGPT to give me like what I should do to make. I forget what kind of style chicken, like tandoori style chicken, and he said it actually worked very well because like the AI was able to see what kinds of spices he had. So it is really interesting with food prep. A lot of people
Yeah,
are using it for that now, which is really cool. I guess like what is the one thing that you fear about the changes that AI will bring? We kind of touched on like how other people are feeling about it, like how it might replace their job, but what do you
yeah.
fear about it the most?
Well, I think at some point we will become, if this really keeps moving at the pace and the speed that I see it currently moving, I think at some point we're going to be like, oh wow, how did we become so dependent on this without even
Yeah.
realizing it? I think that's a real possibility where this thing will start to just replace all kinds of critical thinking, all kinds of knowledge. I don't know what the world looks like where no one has to think about uh, doing anything. They
Right.
just kind of type in what they want into an AI and the AI figures it out.
Yeah.
How far does that go? Like, we're using it for simple technical things now, but you know, who should I vote for? Or,
Oh, yeah.
all kinds of decisions that you don't want to think about. And of course, these things are susceptible to bias and
Yeah.
all kinds of manipulation. So that's my fear is that it will replace
Critical thinking.
critical thinking and fundamental human capacity to see, yeah, I guess, issues. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
just becoming so dependent on it. But you know what? I'm sure people said that when they were building highways too, right? We're going to depend on these highways and these cars, and then now cars are everywhere, and
Yeah.
and I can't imagine a world without cars or without electricity, without airplanes, right? And so I wonder if somebody said that at each of these major
Probably.
technological revolutions.
Well, there's still people that are living the 1850s, so I think probably.
Yeah, it's true.
What do you hope AI can improve our lives in the near future? Not like 20 years from,
Yeah.
like next year.
Well, I think it's going to be able to do some amazing things with science, medicine. I remember reading something about how they had used some kind of combination of artificial intelligence and machinery to help somebody who had a severed spine walk again. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. If it can do that, what else? I know it's got an affinity for processing huge swaths of data
Right.
that, human being really struggles with. And I can't wait to see what kind of innovations medically and scientifically come out of this newfound capability. I also like how it bridges the gap between having an idea and being able to manifest that idea. If I always wanted to be an artist, but I couldn't afford to go to art school, well, now maybe there's a way that I can create those pictures without needing to go to art school or learning how to draw or learning how to paint. I can tell the AI. Now, again, some people are going to argue that that's not, that there's something that is lost when you remove what would you call the learning and the struggle from a process. And,
Yep.
that's fair, but I think removing barriers, allowing more people to create and do things is always a net win.
Yeah. My last question for you is very important.
Okay. And
It is, what is the best sandwich?
God, that's a tough one. The best sandwich that I've ever
And
made.
you can't ask ChatGPT.
Like, what is the best sandwich that I've ever made, or just like my favorite sandwich?
Yeah, your favorite sandwich ever.
I'm a pretty simple guy. I like a tuna mayo sandwich on toasted bread.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get too complicated. So I like that. I really love
Just
tuna. I'm a
just
big fan of
tuna, like
extra mayo.
no.
Not mayo for sure. I'm not, uh, no, it's gotta be some mayo on there for sure. So maybe some pickle juice. You can maybe slice up some pickles, throw those in there too, a pepper for sure.
Okay.
I'm sure ChatGPT can help me come up with
Yeah.
a delicious tuna recipe. Maybe I'll make it for you sometime.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time. That was amazing. And I really appreciate you showing the demo too. Because for me, I haven't really been playing around with it too much with programming. So if you can actually just screenshot an example from a website, like to me, that is one of the biggest takeaways from our talk is that I'm going to talk about that within the community. So thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, you're very welcome. I gotta say, I love what you're doing here. This is so cool. I can't wait to tune into the next episode. And thanks for having me. Obviously, I
Yeah,
like to talk
anytime.
about this. This is so neat.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. We'll
Okay,
talk soon.
thanks, Liz.
Ciao.
Bye bye.
Bye.